One day I finished early in one of her places, and I went to her home to get more done than I usually could in a few hours at night. It was a cold day out, and when she got home she was brushing snow off her coat and exclaiming about the snowstorm. I looked out the window, and there were already 4 or 5 inches on the ground, with more coming down in a steady fall. I told her I better get home while I still could. I cleaned up quickly, but when I went outside, my truck wouldn't start. The battery was dead. I went back inside and asked her if she had any jumper cables. She didn't. I tried calling some gas stations and wrecker shops, but they were all tied up out on calls. It was a bad night. Mrs. Freeman said, "You can stay here, Cal. It's all right. I'll make up the couch for you." I said, "I don't know. I can walk home." "Don't be silly," she said. "Are you sure it would be all right?" She laughed and said, "Of course." I said, "I better call my folks and tell them so they won't worry." I called home and told my mom that the truck wouldn't start, and Mrs. Freeman had offered to put me up for the night. She said she was glad to hear that I wasn't out on the road, that the radio was saying how bad it was. Accidents everywhere. We couldn't send out for food, so Mrs. Freeman made a salad. She asked me if I'd like a glass of wine with dinner, and I said no, I better not. She had a glass. We talked about the storm and other storms we'd been in, and at some point I asked her where Mr. Freeman was. She said he was in Europe making some big deals with German investors, some real estate deal. "It's funny," I said, "all this time I've been working here, I've never met him." "No," she said, "he doesn't get home much." She didn't say anything after that, and I felt like I never should have brought it up. It wasn't my business. I said if she could give me some blankets, I'd be going to sleep. She brought me blankets and a pillow, and I fell asleep on the couch. A while later, I heard her calling my name, and I said, "What?" "Could I get in with you, Cal?" she said. I was awake in a second. She was crouched by the couch, dressed in a nightgown. Her face was close to mine. There wasn't much light in the room, just enough to make that out. I didn't know what to say. I said, "Sure." She lifted the blankets and got in beside me. There wasn't much room on the couch. I felt her body press alongside mine. I put my arm around her. The nightgown felt like silk. Her face was inches away from mine. She had a nice face. I liked her. She smelled good. She said, "Cal." I said, "Mrs. Freeman." She smiled. "Adele," she said. "Call me Adele." I was not a virgin then. I didn't need to be told what to do. But neither was I very experienced, and the way she reacted surprised me. As far as I knew, women were somewhat shy or reluctant. Not Mrs. Freeman, Adele. She was eager. She was burning up. And what was more, she talked while we were doing it, something I didn't even think was possible before I heard her. It was like purple prose out of a romance novel. She repeated my name over and over and begged me to make love to her, only in the most graphic terms. I was shocked, especially at first, but it didn't sound so terrible, coming from her. It stimulated me. She was like a jockey urging on her horse. She was telling me what to do, what she liked, where and how fast, how hard, how she was feeling, and I worked as diligently as a schoolboy to please her. I felt proud and happy when she told me she was there. "Oh, Cal," she said, "I'm there." And then we just held each other. I felt like I was at sea, tossed by the waves, and I was holding on to some flotation for dear life. Part of me couldn't believe what had happened, and part of me could. The part that could won out, and I started to wonder what would happen next. Then she said, "I must have shocked you." I said, "No." "Well, a little maybe, but it's okay. It's okay." "Cal, I'm so sorry," she said. I said, "Don't be. It's okay." "No, I never should have done this. I don't know what came over me. It was a moment of weakness. I just wanted to be with you so badly." "It's okay," I said. "We can never let this happen again," she said. I said no. It happened again in 15 minutes, and 2 more times that night, and each time it was more amazing and concentrated than the last, as if what we were trying to do was fuse our bodies into one. By the morning I was tired and sore, and I also felt like I was in love. I had never been in love before. I guess I had some idea of what love was, something so great, a feeling that was so strong that it was more powerful than you. It just carried you away on wings, and this was like that. I'm not sure I really thought it could ever happen to me, but it had. I didn't think about the circumstances, only about her. She was like nothing I'd ever encountered. I'd never experienced anyone as passionate as she was. She surrendered herself completely, and the intensity of her desire, her need for me, as I understood it then, stunned me and caused me to love her. She was, I thought, exactly what I had been looking for. I became obsessed with her, thought of nothing else. I thought of her when I was working and when I was waiting for her to come home in her house, trying my best to work, but really only waiting until she'd return, and we would kiss and then make love. We didn't need food anymore. We lived on love. It was incredible, inexhaustible. She wasn't Adele Freeman anymore to me. I don't know who or what she was. The woman I loved. At that time it was popular for people to walk on hot coals or jump from a bridge while attached to a bungee cord as a form of excitement, risk-taking, a personal enrichment, I guess. That stuff seemed real phony to me, like the parlor game where you stood in a circle of people, closed your eyes and fell, trusting that they would catch you. Of course they always did. I never understood that. In any event, I didn't need it. Here I was, plunging into a lake of fire, diving headlong into free-falling desire, not knowing where I'd land or how I would end up. It was tremendous. It was also my secret from the world. There was no one but us, and we had changed, in a strange way, a very strange way. It was as if our love was a secret even from us, too precious maybe to discuss. We didn't talk like we had before. Conversation seemed like something very secondary, a waste of time. Instead, we made love. It was so intense that I knew, on that basis alone, it could not last. It had to become something else. Like anything else would have to come up for air. But while it was happening, my only thought was to hang on and keep it going. What was it that could have been so strong? It had to be more than love. It was a need, but a need for what? The need for love, our craving, hers and mine combined, or trying furiously to combine. And even more than that, a destruction of something. The elimination, denial of everything that was not our love. A purification of some kind. I became disoriented. I was getting home at 3 and 4 in the morning, every morning. My parents were concerned, wondering where I was, what I was doing. They trusted me too much to ask that, or they were too afraid to find out. I didn't see any of my friends, never dated. Maybe they thought I might be doing drugs, and in a way, I was addicted, all right. I was hooked on Adele Freeman. I loved everything about her. I loved her wisdom and strength, her maturity, her abandonness, her face, her eyes, her body, her smell, her smile, her passion, her sadness. She would cry sometimes and tell me how happy she was and how much she loved me. I can't believe this, that this has happened to me, she said. I don't know what's going to happen, Cal, but I will never hurt you, she told me. I know, I said. It's okay. Oh, she said. And she held my face in her hands and looked at me with tears in her eyes. You're so young, Cal. What are we going to do? I don't care, I said. I suppose I knew, some part of me knew, that it couldn't work out, that it was like painting on wet wood. One day I finished work and went to her house as usual. I was there so often and was doing so much work in it, making it over, that it felt more like my home than the house where my parents lived. I saw her car in the driveway and my heart leaped, thinking that she had come home early to surprise me. I knocked on the door with this great big smile on my face, thinking what a great day it was and how happy I was just to be alive, and a man in a suit answered the door. He had dark hair and dark eyes, and the way he was looking at me, I knew right away this had to be her husband. The ground swirled under my feet. I had no notion of what to say. He said, yes? Any number of impossible lies raced through my mind. My heart was pounding and my face began to flush red. I'm here for my check, I blurted out. Adele, he said, raising his voice without taking his eyes off me, there's a young man out here who wants a check. She came up from behind him and looked my way without looking at me. Oh yes, it's Cal, she said, darting away. He's been doing some work for us, she called back from inside the house. You know, I told you, painting and fixing up some of the units. She returned with a check, pressed it in my hand. She had been the most important person in my life, the only person in my life, and now there was barely room for her in the doorway. Beside her husband she seemed smaller, and in her nervousness no longer the beautiful woman I loved. "Thank you so much, Cal," she said, her eyes looking right through me. She was talking to me, but it was as if I wasn't really there. I understood the dismissal. Everything was over. "Right," I said, "thank you." I turned and left, twisting the check up in my fist. I had to smooth out the wrinkles when I cashed it at the bank. Adele had been very generous. I never saw her again. I got a note. I found it one day on the seat of my truck. "Dearest Cal," it read, "I will love you and remember you for as long as I live. Please forgive me and be happy. Adele." I didn't have any jobs there for a while. I hung around the house, watched TV, stayed in my room. Mom thought I might have the flu or maybe even mononucleosis. Then I did get some work, and I read in bed at night and would not see the words, would find myself staring senselessly at the page, trying to figure out what had happened and why I had let myself get taken in like that. I wanted someone to blame for this pain, but I knew there was no one. It was like when my brother had died, just a sudden emptiness. And then I would start thinking about ways I could see her again, but I stayed away. It wasn't love, it was foolishness. I had been lost, and I had mistaken it for a discovery. What had she called it? A moment of weakness. My heart felt like stone, but maybe I could salvage something. My dad likes to say that things sometimes have a strange way of working out. Not so long ago, I saw Mrs. Parks on the street, walking her 2 poodles, and we stopped to talk for a moment. She praised the work I had done in her home and asked about my mom and dad, and we were about to part when I asked her if she ever saw Adele Freeman. "I did some work for her after I finished your house," I told her. "She was a nice lady." "Why, it's funny you should mention that," she said. "I heard about her from my daughter Ginny just the other day. She just had a baby, a boy, I think. Isn't that nice?" I agreed that it was. Mrs. Parks told me that the Freemans had moved to New York. She thought. She wasn't sure, something to do with business, and we wished each other a good day. After some thought, I decided to go back to school, to major in accounting. I'm good with numbers, and I think it will make a good career. There's always room for somebody who can keep the books. That's what my dad says. And I've got money of my own to pay for the courses, if I take out a loan. When I went to register, the lady there said, "I see you've been out of school for a while. We have a special non-traditional program that allows students to receive course credits for life experiences. Do you think you would qualify?"